Well, thank you, Tin, for joining us on the walk around. Why don't we just jump right into your background? It's just super interesting to think about how you've come from the finance industry, technology, spending time in Silicon Valley. You were even a pig farmer, I understand, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But as you think about your journey, how did you go from that side of industries into the car business? What attracted you there?
I'm always fascinated by this, Mark. It's a great question because, Tin had a super successful career outside of automotive. Why would anyone want to join this madness that is the auto industry? It's pretty crazy, but
it is crazy.
What drew you into the car business of all things?
Yeah, so I was at a great point in my life. I had a successful career in finance with Amex and some other companies, and then I also before that had a really good run with consumer packaged goods with PepsiCo and Procter and Gamble. But the reason I came to the car industry is previous to joining the car industry, I was with a startup that was owned by Google Ventures, Founders Fund, Kajla, and Valor. And I was president of that company, and we were building technology back basically for the restaurant industry. And also technology that made it easier for delivery and pickup and all the things that you see now. What people forgot is before COVID, all of those companies were borderline going bankrupt because no one ever thought people would be delivering food to your house. And this wasn't very long ago. But bottom line is, I was at a startup. That startup in the technology was sold to Starbucks, and Starbucks took a majority share of that company. And I was in a position where I was figuring out what I wanted to do next. I actually had some opportunities to go back to the startup world. And Jeff Dyke called me, and his first call, and he's the president of Sonic. He called me, and I said, "Well, I have no interest."
Did you have a relationship with them? Did you know Jeff?
I didn't know him at all. I was introduced to him through intermediary. And quite frankly, meeting Jeff, first of all, he's just a phenomenal leader.
Yeah,
and the people, everything I've done in life is really going to people that I respected, I wanted to work with. I really didn't care about opportunity, because everything you go in is an opportunity. They wouldn't reach out for you if there wasn't an opportunity. And quite frankly, Jeff reached out for me, and he's very charismatic. He's just a phenomenal leader. And but what drawed me to the car industry is when you're in startup land, the first thing you actually do for Google Ventures, Founders Fund, everything is they say, when you attack a business, because you kind of fake it until you make it as a startup. You go do one thing and then you pivot. And as you do that, the first thing they will say is, what's the TAM? What's the total addressable market? If it's not a large total addressable market, they say, but you got to bail on that. We only attack huge TAMs. And if you take a look at the auto industry, there's a huge addressable market that was consistent every year, that was very fragmented, that was lacking technology. And I looked at it as a challenge to say, hey, can I help? And I was in a position in my life where it was more important to help, bring value, bring innovation, to bring new thinking than all the career, money, or all those other things. So for me, it came down to, I felt like I could make an impact on the industry. I felt like we had 13,000 employees that, quite frankly, didn't have great technical product. And I felt like I could come into an organization and build products, build systems, and build processes that could empower 13,000 employees to make the experience much better for consumers and build a better experience for the consumer. And as a result of all of these things, drive benefit with revenue and profit for the company. So I wanted to go to a place where in an industry where I could make the biggest difference.
Yeah, well, you certainly came to the right place. I think there's no shortage of opportunities in our business to improve, and as in most businesses. But, I'm curious, and, I think you've been now, it's been about what, 6 months or so in the role in the business. What have been your observations? What's been a belief that you had that you were surprised about when learning and coming into the business, or something that really surprised you, or what's been your observations about the business coming in and learning it from the inside out?
Sure. I think a couple of things. For me, I've really been blown away with the quality of people and the passion that people have in this industry. If you take a look at the industry, a lot of people, for example, where I live in Silicon Valley, they're like, why would you ever go to the car industry? And quite frankly, what they don't get, and a lot of it is, I think I grew up in the Midwest, where Silicon Valley kind of forgets a little bit, but I look at it as the passion in this industry is incredible. The knowledge in this industry is incredible. How well people can manage a P&L and things like that, I think are really strong skill sets that can that helps you be successful anywhere. The things that I've noticed that are very, very different from other industries I've been in terms of technology, finance, as well as consumer packaged goods, is there's so much that we do that is focused on the dealership versus the consumer. And where in the industries I've come from, the consumer is king. The focus on delivering for the consumer, understanding the consumer, and regardless of how you're structured, serving that consumer well and building a lasting relationship with that consumer, it is key. And I think that's what I bring anyway to my position at Sonic. I know we talk about, how does that affect a rooftop? My first thought is usually, how does this impact the customer? And how are we going to build a lasting relationship with the customer? I think the other part that is different is, I think the technology is very fragmented. Many companies have Frankenstein's type of tech. And there are things, quite frankly, that when I go travel and you ask the airline, hey, I need to change my ticket, and that person puts in 1,000 keystrokes just to move through to a seat. I think of that every day, because sometimes our technology is like that, and we have to challenge ourselves to be better. And for the customer, for example, I'll give you an example. People pitch me insurance, all these different products, and the first thing they will tell me is, you can make a lot of money doing that. And I was like, that's not my first question. My first question is, I want you to take me through the customer experience. And if it's more and someone's like, you make a lot of money, and they went through the customer experience, it took 23 steps for the customer to purchase this product. And I said, no, you have to be in less than 3. I mean, I prefer 3, maybe 4 at the most. Things have to be populated. You have to make it easy. You have to educate them in advance. You take them through a great flow. You make it easy, where all they have to do is say yes, put in their payment, sign. And those are the things that are different. In the tech world, everything is done in convenience. And one of the things we always said in technology and custom and in finances is time is the current, not money. And if you can save people time and you make their experience great, they'll pay for it. And that's what I think are differences that I've seen so far in my short time here.
So Thein, I'm curious. I want to go back to what you said about where the consumer is king. And in the car business, it's kind of reversed. So much of it is focused on the dealer. Why do you think that is, from your experience?
I think part of it is, as auto retailer, it's a very fragmented market. So the services and companies to get that business, right, built a system where I'll say yes to anything. If you want this as a dealership group, they have 10 rooftops, I'll build it, make it specialized. I'll do this. And to serve a very fragmented market, you had to build very fragmented products, and sometimes not focused products. And it's very hard to pick, am I going to serve the dealer or am I going to serve the consumer? Because it's really hard to build both. So what happened is they did what most good entrepreneurs did, which is I'll just build whatever it takes to get the business.
Sure.
And what they didn't do afterwards is didn't have the resources or focus or whatever it is to say, okay, now that I have the distribution, I'm going to get the customer. So I think it was just a business choice to say, hey, if I can make a lot of money getting 50, 20, 100 rooftops,
right,
that I've made it. and as a result of that, I serve the dealer more than the consumer.
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective, Mark. I don't think we've ever gotten that perspective about serving the dealer versus serving the consumer. And especially from a technology perspective, it's a very interesting thing because, we all work with a lot of the technology providers. And at the end of the day, who really is their customer at the end of the day, right? And clearly, from an outsider looking in, it would seem like there isn't that focus on the customer experience that we actually talk about quite a lot. But I'm curious now, taking it into today, EchoPark is a totally new model, right? It's the world is your oyster in a way, right? You're not bound by franchise laws or franchise covenants, and you could really take EchoPark in a direction that is totally different than where the industry is. So tell me what's in store for EchoPark in the future.
First of all, I love the EchoPark business model, and I love it because of all of the things you've said and more.
Yeah,
I think what's in store for us is we have to be focused on what got us here, but make it better. And what got us here, I think some of the hardest tasks are to make things simple, to make hard things simple. In EchoPark, our motto and how we got here is very simple. Great cars, great price, great experience. The hard part of that is to really execute that is really hard.
Right.
So what does that mean? Well, that means how do we use technology to figure out what are the best cars people want? How do we build segmentation of our customers and data so that we can give them a curated offer? Right. For example, very close to my heart because of the Starbucks technology, and they bought Brightloom Eats where I was before. Starbucks doesn't offer you everything. They segment the customer, and they know who wants the latte, who wants the coffee black with no sugar, and they market you to the product. So we have to understand our customers better and give them a great experience by providing a curated offer. How do I save them money with insurance? How do I educate them on the VSE and why they should buy a VSE? Because it's going to protect them from the future and all of those things. So it's really about using technology to empower our people to live to our motto, which is great car, great price, great experience.
Yeah, and I love that segmentation. I mean, you think about it, it's definitely not something we do in the business. There's a rumor I've heard, and maybe you could clear this up for me about Starbucks. I heard that Starbucks takes that segmentation so far to the point as to the baristas that they hire, that they're trying to hire baristas that will appeal to different segments. Is that correct, or is that just folklore?
I didn't hear that because I spent 2 weeks in Starbucks lab in Seattle, putting sensors on baristas, doing all their workflow. I mean, it's very advanced. It's a very advanced setup. And even to the mind interviews of right after they did work, interview them to see what's going through their mind and things like that. The funny part of Starbucks is Starbucks was built on this theory that you love to go to Starbucks and that baristas really know, hey, Elliot, you come in every day. This is what you want. I'm going to make it for you. And it's that interaction that you would get if you went to a coffee shop in Italy. Now, maybe the top 2% of their baristas do that. But quite frankly, when you put sensors on them and do tracking studies and stuff like that, most of them are like, how do I make a lot of coffee really quickly and make it customized? Because Starbucks' strength is actually customization. You can have your coffee any way you want. So I would tell you there are many things that Starbucks wants to deliver, and they are phenomenal at delivering them. But when you get into the mind of the barista and what they do, it's very difficult because, man, when volume's going, they just want to stay above water, right? It's almost like we don't want to do a lot of things corporately, but we have to be very sensitive to our people in store to keep them focused. So actually a lot of my focus is more of my focus is out of store versus in store, because you can't have your people sell 10 things, just like you can't have a barista know every single customer at 7:30 in the morning.
Right.
So, Thein, do you think that is kind of the biggest opportunity for personalization when it comes to the customer? Is that online shopping experience? Where do you see that going?
I think online and offline, being able to choose. I think the consumer wants it their way. It's like Starbucks. I want oat milk versus regular cream, and I want it my way at my time. And if you can deliver that curated experience that is important to them, then they're going to be willing to be your customer and be your customer for life. And for example, a female with a young child is going to have a different need than possibly someone who is 23 years old, just out of college and got a bonus from Google as an engineer. You know? And we have to build that, and not just for selling the car, but this how we present the services that resonates in value with them, because safety might be more important to the first customer, and flashiness, cool, and horsepower might be more important to the second set. But you can't, one thing Starbucks does well that we try to do is you can't get all your segments. But what you do is you segment and then figure out who are your most important segments. And those are the segments that you try to serve really well. You try to serve everyone well, but you really hype up your top 4 segments that are profitable for you. There might be a segment that does a lot of volume, but they're just in there because you were the cheapest price online that day, and they only want one and out. You want to make sure that person's happy, but that's not focus. Starbucks is not focused on the one and done.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like in a lot of ways it's totally applicable. Who knew we'd be talking Starbucks in the car business, and customization. It's an interesting topic. I want to go back to something, Thein, and just, for a second here. You mentioned earlier in your career, you worked at, you worked with, I believe, Nestle, was it? I'm curious, I think Nestle, I could be wrong, and I know you're going to correct me here, but did Nestle invent bottled water?
They were the first. So I actually was on the team that launched the first bottled water in this country. They didn't invent it, but for sure they owned a very large business. Their competitors, Group Danone, had Evian and things like that. They had a great European business. The Europeans drink bottled water differently. They know they do it for health. They know the minerals in it and things like that. And quite frankly, bottled water was a zero in the US. In fact, I remember my first sales call. The buyer said, "Who the heck would ever buy something that I can get free for my tap?" And then he proceeded to say, "I know the only person that would buy it, the person that puts water in their iron. So I want you to put 2.5 and 1 gallon next to Clorox, the bottom shelf of the detergent aisle." That was the first bottled water in this country.
Wow.
No way.
We sold Perrier and stuff, which is high end and in restaurants, but in terms of still water, that was the first placement in the US. And I was a part of the team that brought that and I ran the Midwest. I put up a plant there. Then I went into corporate strategy. But Nestle is by far the largest bottled water. They made I think they were the ones that made it successful. And they predicted that people wanted portable water. They wanted ease to carry it around and things like that. So if they didn't invent it, they absolutely scaled it.
So, using that sort of thought process, and maybe this is a tough question, but what's something you think car buyers want today that they don't know they want, right? Like, Nestle figured out that people wanted bottled water when they could get it for free. And now it's a multi-billion-dollar business for a lot of companies, right? Coca-Cola, for Pepsi. What do you think is something car buyers may want that they don't know they want yet?
Oh, I would spin it to say, I think buyers today know what they want. We as the industry sometimes have not done as good of a job as we could have to deliver it. I think buyers want a better experience, more transparency. I think they also want more education. Yeah. If you take a look at how advanced cars are now, man, you buy a car, you walk out. I couldn't even tell you 90% of the great functionalities that vehicle can provide for me, because and I think we as the industry have to do a better job, just like sometimes Home Depot does in terms of education. Did you know this car does all these things? And did you know there are this safety features? And by the way, if you did your car seat this way, it's going to protect your child. So I think that our customers have told us they want a pain-free, transparent experience. And I think one of the things they might not say, but I think they would value is a more concierge type education to maximize the asset that they just bought. It would be like when you buy a house, the inspector comes in and they do a home inspection. They kind of tell you all the benefits. Here's your electrical box, and you have a full report, right, of the insulation, and if in California, if it's quake proof and all this. I think consumers could use that. I get a big book, and man, it's tough to read. I can tell you that.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Elliot.
I totally agree. I think that's a great. I think there's been such a focus recently. Well, not recently, in the past number of years. Whether it be through CSI studies, that time in the transaction is a problem. And I agree completely, Tim, in the sense that it's not really time. It's non-value add time. That's the problem. And I think consumers are more than happy for you to set up their Bluetooth, teach them the features of the vehicle. That's value added time. And I think you're right. I think there's a misnomer out there that quick is better, but it's really about value added time. I love that concierge education service as a great idea.
And I think we have our people in store get stressed because we try to squeeze too much in the time.
Right.
And why we try to squeeze so much in the time is we don't really optimize out of store time. Meaning I didn't cover this in store. I know you were in a hurry and all, but did you know that you just bought a BMW? BMW owners usually love beautiful tires all the time. We can protect your tires and we can make sure it looks good all the time. Right. Here's one, paint protection. Hey, your car's not garaged because you live in this area, Did you know we offer? So there are so many things we can do to talk to the customer and educate them before and after that we don't do. And I think it gets to the point where there's opportunity to talk to the consumer better in a way that is like us talking today and educating, making a decision and talking to them in a friendly way versus, pounding them with 50 emails.
Right. So Tin, on that note, you talked about technology and education. Where do you see EV sales going? We're starting to see so many more manufacturers come up with their lineups, and in some cases trying to convert their entire lineup to EV? Do you think consumers are ready? Where do you see that going?
Well, I'm really mixed on EV, to be honest with you. And just to be full transparency, the startup that I previously left was a sister company of Tesla. We had the same investors. In fact, Valor was the original investor, one of the original investors in Tesla, SpaceX, and they were our largest shareholder at my last startup too. So I know that side of the business very well. I think it's going to be very mixed. I think there's a segment that really loves electric, and I don't know if that consumer knows why they love electric, other than they saw a Tesla and they wanted to join the bandwagon. Because quite frankly, in areas like California, where I have 4 Tesla charging stations within my house, it makes a lot of sense, because quite frankly, it's right at my grocery store. I could plug it in, grab my groceries, it's fully charged, and then I have an in-home charger and things like that. I think in areas of the country where I came from, Missouri, man, that's going to be tough to do. And quite frankly, people are saying, well, it's $6 gas or $4 gas. Well, long term, that's probably not going to be the gas price. How are you going to get your electric? What happens? For example, I grew up in the Midwest. My dad was a farmer. The only vacation we had was a road trip. You got into the back of the truck and drove somewhere. You do that with electric, So I think you got to really look at it and say, is it a good fit for me and my lifestyle? And I don't think it is for everyone's lifestyle, number one. Number two, I think people misunderstand Tesla. Tesla's an experience company. They win. Their interface is so easy. That big screen, I do 3 touches and it can get me anywhere. And I've driven other electric cars. They're great cars. In fact, in my opinion, they're better internally and build quality than a Tesla, but their experience is far inferior. And until that catches up, I think it's going to be really difficult. Now, I do think some of the software and interfaces that the Chinese builders are coming with the Korean are very, very good, and they're going to be there. I get fearful because we as an industry sometimes over-engineer, and quite frankly, when I go through the interfaces of some of the cars, it takes like 20 steps to put in your GPS. And I think for it to be mainstream, we have to, number one, make sure it fits people's lifestyle by having charging station, by having support, by having all these things. And secondly, having the software to back it up. I think it's going to be, I know everyone wants to do it, but I think it's going to be very hard to do it Tesla's way with not having brick and mortar. I think the consumer needs that. And if you look at even the top tech companies, Facebook is testing brick and mortar. Amazon surely will be there, I think, in a few years. It just has to be built out right. I don't think you can be like the banks where you put an ATM and a bank in every corner, but you do need to have coverage, because, man, I think it's really tough for someone to pop down 50K and not touch and feel and drive and talk to someone. I really do.
Well, I think that's a great segue into America's favorite podcast segment.
Fastest growing segment in the podcast nation.
That's exactly right. And, it's funny. We've talked a lot about experience. It's definitely a theme that's recurring on our podcast here, and the experience. I love the connection back to the experience in the vehicle itself, because it's one that's lost. I will tell you, it's challenging. Many navigation systems are very challenging, and it's a big opportunity. But we're going to go right into it. Thein, are you ready for it's a sure thing or not a sure thing?
I'm as ready as ever, Elliot.
Okay. Well, it's funny. We talked about the kicking the tires. You just actually mentioned it a little bit, and that was my first hot take for you. I believe you hear a lot of people say, the car transaction will be totally online, right? It's going to go online, totally, right? But I don't believe that car transactions, now we're talking full car online transaction, will ever be 50% of car sales. I don't believe it'll ever be 50% of overall car sales. Sure thing or not a sure thing?
What is your timeline? Because the younger generation might be a little different, but I would say I do not believe that end to end without touching a car will be over 50%. I think it would require someone to at least touch, feel, and drive and have some interaction. Maybe the deposit might be, but I do not believe that full car sales will be over than 50% in the near future.
Elliot, I think that's a win for you.
Mark, are you in that same camp there, or are you on a digital camp?
I'm with Tin here. I think people by and large want an experience, and at some point they're going to want to talk to someone and get educated about their purchase. So I'm with you guys. I don't believe it'll be over 50% of sales.
I would add another point that I think people forget. We're in an industry where it's trends. The hot car, who would have thought the Bronco would, you know what I mean?
Right.
People aren't buying the same bag of potatoes every week. It's more of there are cars that are hot, there are trends, and with trends, especially at the price that we're seeing, man, I certainly wouldn't want to pop down $50,000-$60,000 without touching and feeling and talking to someone. But
agreed. All right, 1 for 1, Mark.
That's right. Good start, Elliot.
All right. So, EchoPark is a used car superstore, right? A used car platform, and the used car prices are in unprecedented territory at the moment. But and there's a lot of debate as to where they go from here. But I believe that used car prices will not have a steep decline, may not even decline much at all. I believe it'll be a moderate, very moderate decline over the next few years. And it will not be this steep cliff that some people you might hear talk about. Sure thing or not a sure thing?
I would say it depends, because I think used car pricing, especially where it is now, is more tied to the gap between new. If new does not decrease, it is a sure thing. If new decreases, then it will drop significantly. I believe that used has a bigger correlation to new than it's ever had.
Wow. That's good. We haven't had that hot take, and I guess I give myself 50%.
I'm going to give you a half a point on that one, Elliot.
Half a point, Mark?
Half a point.
I'll take it. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, we might have a bonus question in here because, so Thein, you mentioned multiple times you grew up in the Midwest, son of a farmer, and I'll tell people that, I'll tell people for you, your family is one of the biggest pig farmers. Now, I've learned in my research today that it's actually hog farming is probably the proper term, correct? Not pig farming. So I've been saying
we have a different language as country people that we speak when we're on the farm than we on a podcast. Yeah.
So in my research, Thein, I've found out that in North Carolina, hog farms have been in the news lately. In fact, much of it tied to pending lawsuits that allege the farms are nuisances because they really smell bad. And so there's been a whole bunch of lawsuits about that. But I believe, having been a big fan of hogs and bacon in particular, that the concern over the smell of hog farms is fake news. Sure thing or not a sure thing?
It is fake news. Yes. Our neighbors complain once a year when we would spread everything over the fields for fertilizer and it impacted them for maybe a day, 2 days. Other than those 1 or 2 days, they never had an issue. So it is a fake thing.
Yeah.
So
unless you live right across the street, then it might not be. But
so Tin, I've heard you have a unique ability, a unique skill set of being able to visually look at a hog and know immediately what is the market price? What is a fair value for that hog? Is that true?
That is true because, quite frankly, most pigs are fed through a system for butcher and they have to go within a certain weight. If they are heavier, you do not get a price because they don't fit through the machine well. And if they're too small, they don't get a max weight. So I can look at a pig and know the max price because I have to be within 10 pounds, 5 to 10 pounds correct on the weight of that pig.
That's unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Well, there you have it. We have definitely done a walk around with Thein Truong, the Chief Revenue Officer for EchoPark. We've covered Starbucks, we've covered digital transactions, used car prices, and now we know a little bit about hog farming. Right, Mark?
That was awesome, Thein. Thank you so much for joining us and really educating us on so much, as Elliot just said.
A little bit, I educated you on a little bit of nothing.
A little bit of everything and a little bit of nothing all at the same time.
Okay, one quick bonus hot take. I believe Fuji water to be the best bottled water on the market. Sure thing or not a sure thing? So
Fiji water is one of the worst for the environment because it's owned by the wonderful the Resnicks and is backhauled, actually shipped from Fiji. And there's a whole story behind it. But I would say that in consumer surveys, Fiji water usually ranks in the top 2 or 3 in terms of taste. That is, I would say you're pretty correct.
What is it, Thein? Is that your favorite water?
So there's a water, San Pellegrino has a brand that is not gas, not carbonate, called Aquapana. It has similar chemical characteristics to Fiji water. Americans like water that is crisp without a lot of minerals. So Fiji has very low mineral content and Aquapana does too. So
wow.
Little water education. We're
going to have to try that, Elliot, next on the show.
I think I've had Aquapana. It's one of those fancy waters with the glass bottles. You know what I'm talking about? Yep.
Not that Fiji is that inexpensive either.
No. Well, Fiji upsets me because none of their bottles fit in a normal cup holder. So,
it was designed by Sue Resnick. Yeah. Stu Resnick's wife. She is the marketing genius behind Palm Wonderful, that bottle, as well as the Fiji water.
Oh, Palm Wonderful. Very familiar with that.
Same owner, the Resnick family.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again, Thein. We appreciate you taking a walk around with us. As always, it was very insightful. Mark, any parting words for us?
No, I just can't wait to get out to my grocery store and try some of these bottles of water.
Awesome. All right.
Great. Thanks you guys.
Thein.
Thank you.